Hi everyone, welcome back to Harp and Guitar, People and Music. And once again, thank you very much for joining me here for another episode of Whiskey's Blues Gumbo. Now, if you don't know, this is the show where we take weird, unusual, or strange sounding blues words or phrases, things that you might hear in blues songs. And you might wonder what in the heck they're talking about. So today the word or the term that I wanted to quickly address was plantation. Now, you don't hear it so much in modern blues. You don't really hear it in Chicago blues that much unless they're doing an acoustic cover version of an older blues song. You might hear mention of it in some of the British blues stuff that was coming out of guys like John Mayall in the late 60s, because he was covering songs like Parchment Farm, for example, which was a work prison. But plantations aren't really referenced that much in modern electric blues, whether Chicago blues or otherwise. But there was a point, especially in the pre-war era, where many of the songs mentioned plantations, because that was the everyday life of most African Americans in the South at that time. And not just in Mississippi either. There were plantations in Alabama and Arkansas. There were plantations in Kentucky. Basically, you had plantations that were cotton, sugarcane, tobacco, many other sort of cash crops. Now, a plantation was basically a massive farm. These plantations belonged to wealthy landowners in the South. And generally a plantation was set up where you had the big house or the plantation owner's house, a bunch of outbuildings, and then you had the fields themselves, where the crops were grown. And more often than not, housing for the African American slave community on the fields themselves. Now, later on, after the freeing of the slaves, many stayed on these large plantations as sharecroppers. So basically, they were leased out a small section of land that they can farm for themselves. And aside from, of course, the plantation owner wetting his beak and getting a little bit of a kickback, they basically got to keep everything that they could grow on their little plot. But they also had to still continue to work the land, and they got paid for it. They got paid per sack of cotton, or per this or per that, per bushel of this or that or the other. Now, some of these plantations were so big that, especially again after the freeing of the slaves, some of these plantations were so big that not only did they have housing for the farm workers, the sharecroppers or the slaves, but often they had their own churches. There was maybe a community building of some sort that would act as a church and a community center. And later on, there were schools and stores and railway stations right on the plantations themselves. So a train could stop right there and load up with the cotton or the corn or whatever it was, as opposed to the plantation owner having to package it all up and take it into town that had a major railway station. So a lot of these were massive, massive undertakings and huge businesses, employing hundreds, in some cases, multiple hundreds of people. Most notably, some of the largest would be something like Dockery's plantation, for example, where Charlie Patton comes from. And after he decided that he didn't want to be a farmer, he basically left the plantation and just hoboed around, being a professional musician and eventually a recording musician as well. He was a huge star in the blues world, and he would often tour around to promote his 78 record releases to not only juke joints in cities or small rural communities, but on the plantations, often back to the very plantations from which he originally came, like Dockery's plantation. So there you go. Another one for the record books here at Whiskey's Blues Gumbo. Plantation. A massive, basically independent run farm that's owned by wealthy landowners, and you had sharecroppers or slaves at some point or another throughout history working the land. And often these plantations were so large and so self-sufficient that they had churches, schools, stores, company stores, railway stations, post offices, just incredible stuff. So on behalf of myself and my partner in crime here, Monk Music, once again, thank you very much for tuning in, for popping in and joining us here for another episode of Whiskey's Blues Gumbo. And of course, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe here at Harp and Guitar. Really appreciate all that support. And as always, if you ever come across any strange or weird sounding blues words or phrases and you don't know what they mean, drop us a line. Happy to look into it for you and do a video. So until next time, thanks a lot. Take care. Have a great day. And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.